Thank you for tuning in to the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, we're continuing our 2026 NFL Draft prospect coverage with a focus on the offensive tackles. This is always a highly sought-after position, and players simply keep getting bigger and faster. This year's group is no exception, and there is a lot of day one talent to talk about. The Detroit Lions know that Taylor Decker is coming back for another season, but depth and injury concerns still put this position group as a top priority for Brad Holmes and company. We'll cover our top five and a few dark horse prospects that we encourage viewers to keep an eye on coming up next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Jasinski-Drew, joined by Coach Andy Shield, my partner in crime here. We're going to be talking about the offensive tackle position this year for the NFL Draft coming up here in Pittsburgh on April 23rd. Coach, how are you?
Doing well, Drew. Doing well. Moving right along. We are deep into the combine. Actually, the combine will be wrapping up here shortly, and we'll have. There are definitely some risers already. We had some guys that we may be talking about down the road here that did some impressive showing in some of their events. That they chose to participate in at the combine. So, combine is going to be reflected in a lot of other future positions a little bit more so, just because they'll have had the opportunity to have seen them in that. But the O-line definitely has shown out a little bit today.
Yeah, and that's just before we get into it, it said in the intro, Taylor Decker. For Lions fans, Taylor Decker's coming back, which I'm personally surprised at. Watching his interview and listening to how he interviewed after the season ended, I thought for sure he was gone. But Coach, he's coming back. Your thoughts?
Well, it'd be foolhardy for anyone to think, okay, then left tackle is suck, because that's definitely not how that's gonna work. They are they're gonna need some setting up there. They need a third tackle anyway with the retirement of Dan Skipper, who is now one of the assistant offensive line coaches for the Lions, which is great that he gets to stay in there. Yeah, I think Taylor Decker, did surprise some people. It did make it feel awful, like he was leaning the other way on things. And who knows what went into that thinking process. I'm glad that has happened and that he has made a decision, because we really are haunted by a late retirement decision that the team was not able to address, which we talked about in the last position group, and then that of the centers with Frank Ragnow's retirement, which was really unfortunately so late in the game that we really couldn't address it. I'm not going to have to do that with Taylor Decker. Taylor Decker will be back. What will be that Taylor Decker be? Well, I think it's going to be a managed Taylor Decker. I think there's going to be somebody that's going to have to be sharing a little bit here. And let's face it, we have the best offensive tackle in the game in Penei Sewell, who could easily become the left tackle. So, how we utilize Taylor Decker, could be kind of interesting. I think really in the long term, Drew, the Detroit Lions are going to be in the market for a right offensive tackle. And I think that's where things are headed.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Coach. You're right. But good to have Decker back. He
100%.
Injuries aside, he's a very good player still.
That he's the left tackle, and that's what I think we would expect that to be. I think you could see Sewell play both a little bit. You could.
Yeah.
You could see somebody being groomed as the next left tackle as well. They could do that via free agency, but I think there's a good chance. they could be doing it from this position group that we speak of today, and that could very well happen within those first two picks. Because we're going to talk about a nice little chunk of talent here that certainly will be, some of which will be available at both of those selections, more than likely. And, it will be interesting to see, kind of where the Lions go. There's a bit of a feel kind of, that seems like the momentum is kind of swinging towards edge and on the defensive side of things a little bit. And there's news out there too that we're not quite sure how to read into where David Montgomery really fits into things, if he fits into things. There's conflicting reports there, and some of which really come firsthand from him stating that he, has not requested a trade or anything like that either. So not that we would be addressing that, high in the draft, but it would be yet another thing that the Lions would have to address. Terrion Arnold has gotten himself into some interesting times. It does sound like he does not have a real direct link to it. It doesn't sound that way. However, it's just now added to a list of things with Terrion Arnold that has you scratching your head with some low eyebrows a little bit. And, that's a position that we could also be looking at along with safety and several other offensive line positions too. So, interesting times indeed, Drew.
Yeah, let's jump into it, Coach. Let's talk about the top 20 here. Let's run them down.
All right. Well, we're talking at number 20, we got Brian Parker out of Duke. Brian Parker II can also play center, can play some guard. Very, very versatile football player. At 19 is Nolan Rucci out of Penn State, one of a couple Penn State offensive tackles that we'll be talking about here. Number 18 is Trey Zune III. He is also a center prospect as well. So he is a very interesting football player. I think he's an interesting football player for the Detroit Lions, potentially as well. And at 17 is Emil Wagner out of Notre Dame, another Notre Dame offensive lineman, offensive tackle. Cage Casey from Boise State in at 16. At 15, J.C. Davis out of Illinois. Drew Shelton, number 14 out of Penn State, joins Nolan Rucci in the top 20. So Penn State's got a couple offensive tackles in this draft. A guy that really showed out today, Drew, is Markel Bell out of Miami, 6'9", 340, and ran himself a 5'2", So, I think he had also a 32-inch vertical leap. So this is a behemoth of a human being that looks to be NFL ready. 13th offensive tackle on our list. And at 12 is Jude Bowery out of Boston College. At 11 is Austin Barber out of Florida. Top 10, we're just going with Isaiah World. Poor Isaiah, he tweaked his knee pretty bad, and it appears that he tore his ACL. But he's a top 10 offensive tackle prospect in this draft, and he is our 10th ranked prospect. And at 9 is a guy that we'll be talking about a little bit later on, and that's a local product, Caleb Tiernan out of Northwestern. 8 is Max Ianakor out of Arizona State University. This is another guy that's going to be a dark horse that we talk about a little bit more. Going down in at number 7 is Jennings Dunker out of Iowa. Now, he can also play guard. This is a very versatile offensive lineman, a guy that was kind of a featured athlete today at the Combine. 6 is a guy that the Lions have been targeted at a little bit here, and we're going to be talking about him down the road, and that is Blake Miller out of Clemson. And to our top 5 and guys that we'll feature is another guy that has been highly connected to the Detroit Lions. That's Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. Yeah. Number 4 is Caleb Lomu out of Utah. Number 3 is Caden Proctor, Mr. 6'7", 370, 5'2", 240 out of Alabama. Another guy that the Lions have definitely had discussions with. And at number 2 is Spencer Fanu out of Utah, one of 2 Utah offensive tackles on our top 5. And in at number 1 is big Francis Mauigoa out of the Miami, Florida, one of those great Hurricanes that made the championship run this year, Drew. He is going to be our first featured guy, and he is the number 1 offensive tackle on our list.
Yeah, Francis Mauigoa out of the U, 6'6", 335-pound junior. Like you said, Coach, our number 1 prospect, and quite frankly, most everyone's number 1 tackle prospect on the board right now. He's from American Samoa. He's the number 1 rated OT in the class of 12. He was the number 1 rated offensive tackle in the class of 23. He's a 5-star IMG Academy alumni. That's a big deal. His brother of Frederick Mauigoa, and the NFL, he's an offensive lineman for the Bengals and the Panthers. And last year, he's an All-American. In 2023, he's a freshman All-American. He's a three-time All-ACC player. He started all 42 games he's played at the U, and he's had over 2,800 reps at right tackle. Coach, this is a big man, and he's got a lot to like about his game. Let's talk about what do you like?
Yeah, he had a big postseason too in that run. He was kind of the bell cow. They were running behind him, and they had a great running game, power running game that was really kind of the staple of their offense. And Francis Malago was kind of the linchpin bell cow, if you will, guy that they ran behind there. He's got a crystal clean sheet in regards to his participation. It's pristine. His reliability and durability, speaks for itself. He just plays every snap. That's just the way it is. So he's very, very durable and reliable. Something that goes a long, long way. It's got the best run anchor out of any of the offensive tackles in this draft, and that includes some really, really, really big guys. He does the driving. So this is kind of your quintessential right tackle. From a traditional, speak that usually the left tackle is the better pass protector and the right tackle is oftentimes the better run blocker. Well, if that were the case, then this does not defeat that stereotype. Francis Malagoa is an amazing, amazing run blocker. Stonewalls, but the bull rusher. If you want to go speed to power and lock up with him and think you're going to drive him back into and crush the pocket that way. Good luck, because that is something that he has really showed a very, very strong acumen at defeating at the college level. He's shown great developmental markers in his pass protection. He is not the greatest pass protector, probably even in this draft. He's very, very, very good, and it's building upon that. That is definitely a skill that's shown great development. We are talking about a third-year junior here. We're not talking about a 5-6 year player here in this modern era of college football. He's in his third year, and his developmental markers have gone, increasingly in his favor as a pass blocker. Real mean street, tough guy, tough football player. This is your road grader, run blocker first, offensive tackle. He's got the great natural frame. He's similar framed to Penei Sewell, very similar. 6'6", 335 in that and around that area. He's a double team partner. I say extraordinaire. This is the type of guy you want to go down a dark alley with, and do some run blocking. So he's going to be a guard and a tight end's delight. As far as a double team partner, he's got he's a good mover. He's not. There's some other ones that I think are going to be more impressive and can be a little bit more impressive, at least with their linear speed and some of their movement skills. But he's got great control of his body and through his physicality. He does not get penalties. He's very physical and can stick and drive on his blocks. Drew, this is the best offensive tackle in coming into the draft for sure.
Yeah, he's very likely a top 5 pick. But Coach, he's got some things he needs to work on, and there's some things that maybe might hold him back in some ways. Let's talk about those.
Well, when you play so hard and you have such a high, hard running motor, you can get a little clutchy with hands and can get a little over aggressive. And his hands are violent, but they can get a little wild at times, which means their placement might get a little bit separated, and that's when you can kind of expose your holding and that kind of thing. So that's something that's going to have to get cleaned up. Like we had said, he can lose some of his technique through his over aggression. He can just play a little out of control. And what's going to happen a lot of times is he's going to get holding calls, and he's going to lose his balance. He's going to fall to the ground. I've never seen a good offensive lineman, on all fours, Drew. That's not where they're at their best. So that he definitely wants to be on his feet. The super speed rushers, the real good wide 9 types, they're going to give him some trouble. He is definitely going to have to do some catching up there. And he's going to have to overplay a little bit and expose his inside and beat people with some toughness. Because the high caliber advanced pass rushers are going to, they can work him a little bit. And that has been something that has shown up in his film. But he has gotten steadily better throughout his career at Miami. But he can get baited in some of the stunt games, and he definitely was really susceptible to that earlier on in his career. There's a lot of film that and really as he has kind of matured, so have the Miami Hurricanes. As you can see, they made it all the way to the national championship game, once again this year. And a lot of it had to do with his improvement and development. He's got to develop that elite portion of NFL pass protection, in his development. He's going to be a borderline elite run blocker when he hits the ground running, no pun intended, this season. Barring any, unforeseen health, which, that's something that he really is also a feather in his cap, is his great durability. He is a fine run blocker. When he can bring the pass blocking to the level of his run blocking, we are now talking about a top 10 offensive tackle in the NFL. That's his ceiling. His ceiling is to be one of the finest in a Pro Bowl or in an All-Pro. But he's going to get there with his pass blocking first.
Yeah, he's Lions fans shouldn't really be too concerned with him. He won't be there at 17. I can tell you that.
I don't think so. I mean, I think some of us have fun with a lot of the mock draft simulators, and there's times where the algorithm will pull him into that category, and he's like, it's a slam dunk, folks. And that's a great talk too, Drew. That's a great segue into that. If Francis Malgoa was at 17, would you draft him for the Detroit Lions? Oh, most certainly, because it makes life really, really easy for the future, because Penei Sewell becomes the left tackle, and then Francis Malgoa is the new right tackle. That like you had said, Drew, I think this is a guy that goes top 12, likely top 10 in this draft, and we're gonna have a tough time getting there. But I mean, do you see it that way too, Drew? Would you see this guy in Honolulu blue and silver if he were to drift into 17? Would you trade up to get him?
Well, now that's an interesting question. To me, that's the only way you get him is if you were to trade up and get him. If he fell to 17, coach, I would think that there might be a reason for it that would be underlying, because in my mind, there's no way he falls to 17 as long as everything's above the board and there's no health issues that pop up like they unfortunately do, like within the last 48 hours before the draft. I was saying, we got a knee or we got a back or we got a neck, and it's like, oh, here we go. And unfortunately, a prospect will go from day 1 to day 3 and at times undrafted. I doubt that'll be the case here. So, yeah, I mean, I think if Decker had honestly, coach, I don't think they're in a position where they can trade up like that because they need draft capital. The Lions have a lot. They're a very good team, but they still have a lot of holes to fill, and they've actually got some starters to replace, and that's a big deal. They have 8 picks, and they need to keep that at least. If they were to trade up there, they'd have to trade back somewhere else to get some more draft capital in my mind. So that'd be a tricky one.
Or a player.
Or a player, yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, and then maybe that's where David Montgomery comes into play right there when you brought him up. So absolutely, I would love to have him there. I would be very pleased if the Lions did trade up to get him, but I would be concerned about, okay, what are you going to do about draft capital then? So that's where it's at. But this is a very good football player, and I've stopped myself from even thinking about what if he went to Detroit, because I just don't see it happening. This is a really good football player. Yeah. So especially with Decker coming back too. So who we got at number 2, coach?
We have at a number 2 offensive tackle on the Sports Peninsula podcast big board for offensive tackles is Spencer Fano out of the University of Utah. With Kyle Whittingham's former coach, Kyle Whittingham, now the coach of the University of Michigan Wolverines, one of his fine offensive tackles off of last year's roster. They're basically like a carbon copy of each other. They are both 6'6", 308 pounds. Spencer is a junior. He comes right out of the state of Utah, so he's a local. He was a Spanish Fork, Utah native, a 4-star prospect. He was this year's Outland Trophy winner for top offensive lineman. So, Drew, this guy was the guy that took home that hardware, which is a long historic list of great football players that have won that. Runs a 4.9 40. So Spencer's a very athletic young man at 6'6", 308 pounds. He has 4 different uncles on both sides of his family, dad and mom, that have played in the NFL. So he comes from another athletic acumen and an athletic family. He started 36 of his 37 games he's played at Utah. He's been a starter on the offensive line at either offensive tackle position. He was an All-American this past year and was this year's Big 12 Offensive Lineman of the Year. So Spencer was kind of the toast of the town in the Big 12 Conference. 2-time All-Big 12 Offensive Lineman, 3 career sacks. That's all he's yielded, and 7 quarterback hits and over 1,000 pass reps. He's got 26 games in at right tackle and 11 games at left tackle. So this is a guy that has predominantly played his career at right tackle. He probably is a right tackle, and that's probably where he is headed towards, Drew, when we talk about his future position, but has also shown the ability to become a left offensive tackle, and given environment could be trained that way. But Spencer Fano, Drew, this guy is a surefire number 1 or first round draft pick.
Yeah, he is, Coach. Like him a lot, and then a lot of you mentioned the mock draft algorithms. Spencer Fano is in play at 17 quite often. Although after the combine, after everything shakes out, I'm seeing him climbing up. So he may be there, he might not be, but he's definitely a day one talent, like you said. And there's a lot to like about him. Starting out, he's got the versatility, like you mentioned. He's played predominantly at right tackle, but the 11 games at left tackle, that's nearly an entire college season. So that's a big deal. To be able to play both positions is huge. He's got a firm anchor and he's got physical hands. So he's definitely stout at the point of attack. He's a fluid athletic mover. He has tremendous functional athleticism, as illustrated with a 4.9 40, 6'6", 308 pounds. That's crazy athletic. Very football intuitive and a willing communicator. He will take control. So he's a leader out on that field, on that line. That's huge. He's physical, he's aggressive, and he's got a hard running motor. You always want that box check, especially on a Dan Campbell Detroit Lions team. But quite frankly, any NFL team, you want that hard running motor. He's explosive, he's balanced, and he stays on blocks. So he finishes his blocks, and he makes sure he doesn't leave prematurely, allowing plays to get destructed at the line of scrimmage. He's really good at hand fighting, and he counters the advanced pass rusher as well. That's important too. So he's a good hand fighter, and he's good at countering. So that's huge. That's like a boxing term, right? But it's very similar at the point of attack in the trenches there, right, Coach? I mean, you're going at it. You got to know, how to counter that first initial move by the edge that you're facing. So at the end of the day, there's a lot to like about Spencer Fano, and man, he would look good in Honolulu Blue, Coach.
Yeah. Now, comparing him to Francis Mauigoa, Mauigoa is probably a little more physically imposing, a little bit more of a mauler. If you're going to fight a lion or a tiger, like the animal, or a bear, probably Mauigoa is the guy that you would probably go with here. If you wanted someone to dance with an elite pass rusher, and do pass drops and pass sets, then maybe Spencer Fano then enters the equation a little bit. He's not quite the run producer at the level that Mauigoa is, but he's awful close. But you do get the athleticism and a little bit better of a pass blocker at this point in time in his career. Higher ceiling, okay, we could go, that's a different, that's not where we're going with things here. But yes, sir, Drew. Yes, sir. In a given circumstance, could Spencer Fano leapfrog Francis Mauigoa? I think it's possible. I think it's possible. However, I think there are some things here that are going to be considered here. What are they, Drew?
Yeah, first thing on top of my head is that there's a 30-pound weight difference, and that is huge. But not that Fano's a small guy by any means. But if we're comparing to Managoa, yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. He's definitely the more the mauler. But Fano's got a lot to like. But yeah, he's got to work on his pad level, coach. He gets higher later in games, and when he struggles, it's due to pad level. That speaks to fatigue at times too. So that's something that's got to get addressed. He's got a hard running motor, but maybe sometimes he's sprinting when he needs to pace himself a little bit at times. I mean, would you agree with that, coach? Because if he's burning out or getting tired, maybe he's got to pick his spots a little better.
Well, he played in an awful physical, offensive scheme with Kyle Whittingham. So
True.
If they possess the football a long, long time, he's going to be a little worn down there in the fourth quarter. But in the NFL, the physicality and the athleticism, he's going to want to definitely be keened up for that because it's not going to get easier.
No, definitely not. So again, he gets over aggressive when tasked with countering elite athleticism, and that's natural, of course. But again, that also speaks to maybe playing a little more within himself and making sure he's got enough in the tank for the fourth quarter. So that's something he's got to work on. He loses too many rope-a-dope, quote unquote, battles in pass protection. So that goes into the hand fighting, firm physical hands. He's a good hand fighter, but he's got to make sure he doesn't get tricked and pulled into something, and then all of a sudden he's got that edge is going behind him. He's got to make sure he's firm, but also can manage that and understand what that lineman's going to do so he can counter it. He's good at it, but again, he does lose. He's not 100% successful on that. He's got to make sure he shores that up a bit. He may need to add some functional strength and mass. Yeah, that's probably true. Certainly at the end of the day, just to make sure he's going 60 minutes, 4 quarters. So that's a big deal. And he may struggle with penalties through over-aggression at times early on in his career. And you talked about that. If you get in trouble with hand placement, those yellow hankies are going to come out really quick. So he's got to make sure that he stays aggressive, plays to the whistle, but also plays within himself and within the scheme. But that all can get coached up. The strengths and the physicality, so much to like here, Coach. If he's at 17, are you considering him for Detroit?
Oh yeah, definitely. And in some ways, our situation, if Spencer Fano's there, and that's where Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell want to go, it really is a great situation for that because we do have, Penne and Decker kind of locked in, and he could be the perfect antidote to Taylor Decker and to relieving that a little bit and putting probably a little stress and pressure on Penei Sewell because Fano would go in at the right tackle position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you would start to do some different things with Penei and maybe even at times utilizing him as that extra tight end, in the 13 personnel that, we're so, being prepped to to expect. So, there's a clear fit here, in at 17, ultimately, some of the things I don't know. It all depends what the run-on positions are, right, Drew?
Yeah.
It kind of is difficult to kind of determine, where that's going to all go. Where will there be a run? Will there be a run on offensive tackles? If so, then Spencer Fano's probably going in the top 15 because he's that kind of a player and he's an instant starter. I think it's fair enough to say that he can start right away in the NFL. He'd greatly benefit from being feathered in like he would be here in Detroit, probably. If he was taken that high. If I see anything with him, and he did it against Oklahoma a little bit, it's almost that he gets kind of cute. It's like too cute. It's like he wants to toy and bait you into a move. But, sometimes those guys are even better and they know that that's what's happening and they can counter those things and you can kind of get fooled that way a little bit. And at the NFL level, these guys are going to be masterful at that. So, there are some growing pains that he's going to have in that regard, but, certainly I don't know if he would be there at 17. And if he is, and we didn't take him, it would be because we decided to prioritize another position. But yeah, Drew, I think Spencer Fano is a guy that I do see potentially being a Detroit Lion if he were there.
Yeah, you hit a good point before we go into our number 3 prospect, coach. If the Lions were to have him there at 17 and pass on him, it's going to be because, like you said, they're going to prioritize another position. And the reason why I think that would happen is because I firmly believe that on day 2, there's going to be a lot of tackle talent still there that's going to be pretty solid football players. But there's maybe not as many, say, edge rushers or cornerbacks or safeties for that matter. And you might have to kind of roll the dice and take somebody in one of those positions because you'll have to fall back to one of the tackles for day 2. And to me, this group's deeper than some of those other groups I just mentioned. So I think that's what it would end up shaking out. But yeah, if he goes to Detroit, things are looking up in Allen Park and in Detroit, no question. Our number 3 prospect is Caden Proctor, the offensive tackle out of the University of Alabama. He's only 6'7", 366 pounds, folks. So, he's a junior. By the way, I think he ran a 5.22 240 today at the combine. So, wow, unbelievable. He's a five-star prospect from Des Moines, Iowa. 535-pound bench and an 815-pound squat. This man is strong. He was the 2023 freshman. He's on the freshman All SEC team. He's an All-American last year. He's a 2-time All SEC player. He played 40 games with 40 starts with the Crimson Tide and has over 2,400 reps at left tackle for the Crimson Tide. Coach Caden Proctor is a stud. What do you think?
He absolutely is. He's got a younger brother, Caleb Proctor, that's also going to be drafted. I think when I say younger, I shouldn't say younger. I think they're twins, but maybe Caleb might be technically even older, but I don't think he's bigger. I don't think he's bigger. He is 6'7", 366 pounds, and an absolute just monster in the weight room, and he can run that 5'2", 240. Drew, this is a guy that is a freak of nature physically. They're absolute freak of nature physically. There he is next to Tyler Booker, last year. I mean, just look at those two guys right there. I mean, that is one heck of an offensive lineman. Side of an offensive line coming at you. But you got a lot to like here with Caden Proctor.
Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah. So, this is yet another seasoned veteran. He's 20 and a half years old. He's very young. Third-year junior with all these starts, 40 starts in 40 games already. He has an immense frame. There's a couple of guys. There's a couple guys in this draft that are just absolute giants. Caden Proctor is one of them. And he's his functional physicality and strength and athleticism really almost transcends all of them. His movement skills are just crazy for a guy as big as he is. He's a left offensive tackle, 32-inch vertical leap at 370 pounds. I mean, that's 32-inch vertical leap would be considered a good vertical leap by an edge rusher. And this guy is just as big as he is. Elite run pass anchor. You will not have a bigger, thicker, heavier anchor than Caden Proctor, and a guy that can play with that kind of an anchor. Because he's got the real dog mentality. Plays very physically. He's a finisher. He wants to get guys to the ground. He wants to be a forward mover. He generates the movement at the line of scrimmage, Drew. And the Lions, he was at the Senior Bowl. Obviously, wouldn't participate in the Senior Bowl. He's not a senior, but the Lions have met with him, informally, and he does kind of come, in at the third spot. He's the left tackle. He's a left offensive tackle.
Yeah.
Drew, I mean, I think it goes without saying, if he were somebody at 17, you would have to consider this.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt. And the more I see of him, and then seeing his workout at the combine, it reinforced what you see on tape, because tape's what really matters. Although we've learned that that's not always the case. If you run a 4.6 40 and you're a cornerback, that's probably not going to translate well in the NFL. One of those things. But this man is as athletic as you can get at left tackle, but to be that big and strong, very, very, you'd have to give me a convincing argument why you wouldn't take him. And again, it would kind of like the fan conversation. It, to me, it would only be because there's another need and there's a player there that they like too, and they're not going to get that kind of value in day two at that position, but they might get closer at left tackle or right tackle. So to me, that's it. But Caden Proctor, if I just look at those strengths and I just look at his body work on film and see his measurables, there's a no brainer. But there's a reason we got him at number 3, Coach.
Yeah, I mean, just you have to look at this size of a human being and kind of understand what you're getting. It's the same thing if you're going out to buy a car and you weren't, but now are considering like a Ford Excursion. I mean, it's a big vehicle here, and it's a big frame and it's a massive motor that burns hard, and that's an attribute. I don't know, how is that a weakness? It's not necessarily. Not on the surface, it's not a weakness, it's a strength.
Yeah.
But ultimately, this league is just absolutely amazing physically. Can he hold up and do that for 4 quarters? Or will he be toast? And we'll just gas out. I mean, will he just kind of burn out while he's out there at times? Because sometimes the big dogs can play that way. And it takes a little bit of a difference in their conditioning and that kind of thing. And they have to lighten up a little bit. Well, if he lightened up even 20 pounds, he'd still be 350. So, I mean, that is a possibility, and somewhere where he may have to go ultimately for him. Because he can get worked a little bit by those advanced pass rushers and some of those guys with amazing, great feet and hand rhythm, and that can really gain on your hip quick. He struggled with those guys. Those are the guys that give him, some problems. And he can get a little grabby. That's, when against the great athletes and hold. And he'll get called for that a little bit early on in his career. He will.
Sure.
Pad level is going to get higher as he fatigues. That kind of goes without saying. That'd be good. That's almost, you can expect that. He doesn't get to the second level. He's not like Francis Mauigoa on climbing to the second level. Now, I know we're talking about a left tackle as opposed to a right tackle, but he does not climb like Mauigoa or Spencer Fano. He struggles with that more. He's a natural pass setter, a great double team combo guy that can kind of be the post and the driver. And that guard can be kind of the scoop player from the inside onto the second level. That probably befits Caden Proctor a little bit more. I'm very excited for him.
And these concerns are legitimate. There's no doubt. What I don't put him in that Mekhi Becton or that kind of conversation.
He's a little more proven than Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, I mean, and I know it's high risk, high reward in a sense. If you're that big of a guy, I mean, you're going to be a mauler and you could dominate. And then
he's probably destined to go to guard eventually.
Yeah, that's a great point. Reminds me of Big B a little bit. When we had him over here for a couple of years, he ended up going to right guard, and he was able to do that. That was kind of the plan all along. But he was a right tackle, so yeah, that's a great point. But oh my goodness, the thing with the Lions in particular is, and you're absolutely right. Typically, the right tackle is going to be the guy that's going to be leading the run. He's going to be going to second level. But the Lions really do a lot of different things offensively, and often you would see Taylor Decker or a Christian Mahogany or Graham Glasgow out there on the second level, on a screen or whatever the case is. And you're going to have to do that. So if I have one concern about Caden Proctor, it's that. Can you do that effectively? You've got to be able to do that effectively for 4 quarters. So, but oh my goodness, this great football player. Make a very difficult decision at 17 because I think he's going to be there. In my personal opinion, but we shall see. Let's talk about our number 4 guy, Coach. Who we got?
We are going back out to Salt Lake City at the University of Utah. And for our fourth offensive tackle prospect, much like the second, is a 6'6", 308-pound third-year player by the name this time of Caleb Lomu, and not Spencer Phantom. So Caleb Lomu is our fourth-rated prospect out of Gilbert, Arizona, 4-star out of Gilbert, Arizona. And he played in the high school All-American Bowl. So Caleb is a guy that has got some pedigree to him and has been highly touted for a long, long time. 22 starts and 25 games at the University of Utah. He did get fully redshirted his first year and did not play in any ball games then. So he is, which, he's got some lighter miles on him, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Not necessarily a bad thing at all. 2025 All Big 12 player. So he joined his teammate Spencer Fano and being an all Big 12 selection this year. 2 career sacks and 8 quarterback hits and 15 pressures and 800 plus pass reps as a collegiate pass blocker. Doesn't quite have the body of work that maybe some of the other prospects do, but nonetheless, those are very impressive totals. Nonetheless. He's got about 1,600 reps at left tackle and 32 reps at right tackle. To call him position diverse, I don't know if that's a bit of a stretch. Most of his work has come at left tackle. But Caleb Lomu, Drew, is a very, very good projectable long-term starter at left offensive tackle in this league.
Yeah, I agree with you, Coach. And I think there's a lot of folks out there. I would say a lot. I'd say a lot of people are torn between Fanu and Lomu, and they happen to be teammates and nearly identical physically and stature. But they like that Lomu is the left tackle. And like traditionally, that's the blind side guy. That's the key position. The league's evolved now, and in particular, our Lions that we're fans of, that would be Goff's blind side. But at the end of the day, those guys are asked to do as much on the left side as the guys on the right side are. They have to be very versatile in that respect. So I understand how people could like Lomu better situationally. But talking about his strengths and what we like about him, like you said, Coach, he's explosive. Functionally, he's got really good reactiveness. He's got good functional athleticism, and he's got that twitchiness to him in his hands and his feet. That's a good thing. He's got a longer athletic frame, and again, similar to Fanu, I think they're almost identical. 6'6", 308. He's got excellent movement skills. He can pull and screen with ease. Gotta like that. Can get to that second level. Can pull. That's a beautiful thing. He's comfortable and fluid in pass protection settings. So that, to me, I look at that as like that's got to be a given. But I really like that he's able to be very effective in the run game too, and that's just huge. He's heavy and active hands. He's got good football punch, so he's able to straighten up that DN or that edge rusher coming at him at the point of attack, and that's huge. One of the more comfortable pass setters among prospects. He just looks so comfortable. He looks really athletic and comfortable in his size. To be 6'6", 308, and he looks like he's playing like he's a 6'3", 270-pounder, Coach, to me on tape. So I really like how he looks out there. And good football stunt and blitz sleuth. Again, we like those guys that can sniff out those stunts and blitzes, and Caleb Lomu is definitely one of those guys. A lot to like about him, Coach.
Oh, 100%, Drew. He's just a fluid athlete. And, he was one of those guys that you could catch, in the late night games. There'd be even times I'd be coming back from, East Lansing from having watched the Spartan in a night game. And we'd still get back and I'd still catch the fourth quarter of the late game. And sometimes at the University of Utah. And got to see him do things a little bit that way and did some research on him. He's just a very fluid, comfortable athlete. He's definitely pro-ready for a pass set situation. Regarding the Lions, I mean, if the world was perfect, we did not have the injury woes that we do have, or the voids that we have in some spots in some position. I mean, he would be just wonderful to take it because he really kind of fits then he really kind of fits a long-term future, narrative for our offensive tackle. Like he can kind of train under Taylor Decker, be that third offensive tackle, be almost that extra tight end at times. We now can leave Penei Sewell at right offensive tackle. And, here we go. And then Caleb Lomu, his second year, is the starter, on this great football team here. And, that sounds great and all. However, I think, we have to look at that position. And and maybe look at using the 17th pick a little bit differently. Not because of Caleb Lomu necessarily, but because of need to have a player now that can be out there as a true starter. What are some things though, Drew, that he's got to work on, because he is not number one on our list?
No, and like I was stressing, I do like him in the run game, but he's definitely a better pass blocker than a run blocker at this point. But much like some of the other prospects we talked about, he's getting better. So that's a positive. It's a fact. It is a fact. He's a better pass blocker and run blocker right now, but it is also a fact that on tape he's getting better. So I'm not as concerned about that, but he's got to keep getting better. He's got to keep working at it, and I'm sure he will. Most of his best clips that show out are in the pass blocking phase, no question about that. So he's checked that box, multiple times, but he's got to show that in the run blocking. In need of gaining some functional mass and strength. Yeah, much like Fanu, right? He could probably put on a solid 10, 15 pounds of muscle and maybe not miss a beat, and that would be fantastic. He could do that. So that's something he's got to work on, no doubt. He does struggle with maintaining blocks through to the whistle. So, and I don't know if that's prematurely not say giving up on the play, coach, but would you say that maybe already thinking ahead too fast before you take care of business?
Well, yeah, I mean, when hey, when we're all losing kind of ground or whatever, we kind of get desperate. So, I mean, that's kind of what that is rather than, showing some recovery technique, that's when he'll latch on and kind of commit to holding or whatever the case may be, to kind of save face. So those are some things that, he's been, it happened to him a little bit in his career. He struggled with USC, the one time, and Oklahoma really gave him some fits a couple of times. And, he latched on a little bit, but it's not so much for a lack of effort. It's a rather than it's kind of giving in to your desperation and needing a little more seasoning, because, he's still awful young at this.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And that ties, you said it exactly. If he loses technique, he'll get clutchy at times and losing the physical battle. So that's a big thing he's going to have to work on, but very, very coachable situation there. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that that's something he can improve pretty quickly, but he's going to require some development as a complete blocker. And then to your point, and that ties into what we're talking about. If he's do we see him as a Lion at 17? It would be a lot better if there. I mean, let's be real, folks. I'm seeing these mock draft engines, and I'm not seeing safety as a need. I'm wondering what team they're watching. The last I checked, the Detroit Lions starting safeties are not going to be. It's a huge need. And regardless of whatever that situation with Terry and Arnold, it's a concern that he can't stay on the football field too for injuries. They do have DJ Reed at the other corner. He missed 4 games last year. So all of a sudden, corner's a need. Tackle is still a need on this team, but with Decker coming back, it may buy them another season. But again, as a fan, and I know there'll be a lot of fans that will say this. So you talk about Drew, the guy's toast right now. He's hurt. I'm concerned about that, but I also coach, and you're around that team. You've been coaching this sport a long time, over 30 years. A guy like that ain't making that commitment unless he's very sure he's going to be able. He can see it through as long as nothing bad happens. He's physically able. Would you agree?
Yes and no. I mean, he needs to be protected a little bit. He feels good now, but I mean, the last several years, it was very tough to the finish line, and really going into the 2025 season, the 2024 season really took its toll on Taylor Decker. He wasn't altogether right coming into the 2025 season, and it was an absolute nightmare for him. He's not going to stay here long term in the Detroit area. So his family's getting older now, and he's missing things, and that also is playing a part into it, and physically, he really hurts, and that can also play on the mind as well, and sometimes the lack of physical health can lead to struggles with mental health and those kinds of things. Not saying those are necessarily huge issues for Taylor Decker, but I don't think he wants them to be huge issues either.
Sure.
So these are all things that it very much feels like this is a retirement party or a farewell year for him in that regard. Yes, I do think he's the left tackle, not just because he's a de facto starter, because I think he's the best option that we have there. Do I think we're going Caleb Lomo at 17? No, because we do have Taylor Decker capable of playing left tackle majority of the time this coming year. Caleb Lomu probably is a Detroit Lion in some sort of trade package down, because I just think he probably falls inside that 50th pick. Now, if somehow we were able to acquire a pick into the 40s or 30s,
it changes things.
Well, then it's interesting, because I certainly think he'd be a wonderful player to target to replace Taylor Decker, come 2026. I think he can be almost a lead candidate for that in a given scenario, but I don't think that's going to happen.
You read my mind, Coach. Me personally, I don't like the fit at 17 because of all the reasons we articulated. He's not going, in my view, he won't be there at 50. So that is the only way the Lions get him, is if they really did like him and target him and traded up to get him in that 30 to 45 range, anywhere from there. 30, I guess that late day one, it's a possibility. Like, if there's a run on tackles, that there's going to be some happy guys that we're talking about right here, because I mean, they're talented enough to go day one, and this is our number 4 guy, and we could understand the logic of him going to Detroit. We just don't see it happening at 17. So makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about our number 5 prospect, Coach. It's Monroe Freeling out of the University of Georgia, the Bulldogs. 6'7", 315-pound junior. 5-star prospect from Charleston, South Carolina. A 3-year starter in high school at football and basketball. High school All-American Bowl participant as well. And he played 34 of 40 games at Georgia. He's an All-SEC team member last season, 287 career reps at right tackle, and over 1,350 reps at left tackle. So a combined plus 1,600 plus reps at both tackle positions for a young man who's very large. And as you can see his frame, he holds his weight well. He's a pretty balanced, physical guy, Coach. Monroe Freeling's the real deal.
Really has climbed the charts. This is a guy that's got a little bit, less miles on him than a few other prospects do. So he's kind of been a guy that was a little bit further down the pecking order earlier in the draft process, but has steadily climbed as of late. And that it started throughout, obviously some further evaluation of what he brings to the table. This is a guy that is really kind of climbing the ladder, and some would say this is the Detroit Lions' favorite offensive tackle prospect in this draft, and that would even consider him potentially at number 17, just because of what he could bring to the table in the form of being that third tackle and that extra tight end at times because of his athleticism. As he would transition into becoming that starting left tackle, likely, in year 2. But nonetheless, this is a guy that is really climbing the ladder, and I think has found himself into the first round, Drew.
Yeah, definitely, and certainly we heard a lot. Certainly his combine performance helped him, and his interview and what have you. And like you said, the Lions have definitely been linked to him, and they've talked to him. So let's talk about what we like about Monroe Freeland.
Yeah, he's a reactive athletic player. You know power forward center basketball in background, and he's very reactive that way. A good as a defensive basketball player, he can really kind of bring that to the table as a pass setter and pass blocker at the NFL level. He's got great balance and movement. A very fluid athlete, kind of Spencer Fano like that way. Moves similarly in a little bit bigger frame, but not different than Lomu that way. Very fluid mover, even a little bit bigger even yet. So he brings a lot of high caliber functional athleticism to the table. He's really improved statistically in his pass setting, and which really reveals some deep developmental and coachability strengths on Monroe Freeling's behalf. This is a guy that's going to get nothing but better. You can just see right there. I mean, he's engulfing that edge player for Georgia Tech. I mean, that is just, he looks absolutely gigantic there. And he's demonstrated some great pass protection capability. This is definitely a left tackle prospect. No doubt about that. And he's developing into quite the finisher. As his starts went on, and he was big in this against Georgia Tech. He really did a nice job, in that game, just kind of really kind of handling himself out there. And Georgia, the Bulldogs probably didn't have the season that they would like to have had. That being said, it was not because of Monroe Freeling's development. He clearly is getting, more and more, attention by draft analysts. But I think that's upon further more and more review of his body of work and the things that he continues to do to prove himself.
Yeah, and he's another guy that has just steadily, like you said, climbed the board. He's steadily climbed the board, and now he's in play at 17, like you said. There's no question about it. He's definitely distinguished himself in that regard. And if there is that run on tackles, it solidifies that. But coach, he's got some things he needs to work on. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, he's only got 16 starts. I mean, he's very the miles are low, and that can be a good thing. It certainly can be a good thing, but also he does not have a big body of work, and sometimes with those kinds of guys, there's just such a learning curve that they don't quite reach the potential that you thought that they would have had in the NFL, because they were just the ability is just too daunting from the test of battle that they've had. I don't think that's going to be the case for Monroe Freeling. He's not going to suffer that way that like a Giovanni Manu has. It's not quite like to that degree. He had those 16 starts are at the high D1 caliber level. Very long, lean body. You can see he is kind of long and lanky in regards to his kind of physical, composition. So he's going to have to add some mass. But I mean, we are talking about a guy that's probably going to be 6'7", 325 at some given point in time, very, very soon. So I mean, not too much. He's in pretty good shape that way. He's got to finish as a block sustainer, finisher. That still was a work in progress at Georgia. He looked really good against Georgia Tech, but Georgia Tech's a great football program. There, things are really kind of perking up over there. That being said, Georgia Tech's not the New England Patriots or the Seattle Seahawks either. So I mean, there's going to be a little bit more of a growth curve there. Yeah. So yeah, he needs some incubation time. He is not probably prepared to be. I mean, he could be a starter day one, but there is going to definitely be some growing pains there because he's a much better pass setter than he is a run blocker at this point in time.
Yeah, I like his game, like how he looks on tape. I'll admit, early on in the process, he wasn't really on the radar on in the first 2 rounds for me, and then he was off the board. So he was already slotting in immediately, likely like a late day 2. But now, as more folks have seen the tape, checked out his athleticism, what have you. All of a sudden, he's a first round candidate, and yeah, I like him. I don't see him at 17. I also don't see him at 50, but it's very similar, like we said with Lomo. I think the way if he were to be a Detroit Lion, they would have to move up from 50 to get him somewhere in that 35 to 40 range, coach. But I do like him a lot. And I might. I like Lomo too. So I mean, I think we got him. I agree with where we got him, but man, it's I'm torn there, and it's a good thing because he's a very good football player. What are your thoughts?
Both are fine athletes. Both are fine athletes. Freeling's got a little more frame to work with. There's an inch. He looks bigger. His arms are longer. There's just a little bit more to work with there. He also has played a little bit more with some position versatility. So I mean, honestly, Lomu's a little more proven, but I think there's a little bit more to work with as far as ceiling in Monroe Freeling. So I mean, yes, I think they're both worthy guys of the 17th overall pick if the Detroit Lions were in a better position to draft a guy that they can develop at offensive tackle with the 17th pick. I think that it's just more of the 50th pick. And if they could turn the 17th pick into the 24th or 25th pick, along with a 35th pick or 38th pick and the 50th pick, well, then let's talk a little bit differently. But that's not where we're at with things. I just think he kind of falls in the void of where they're going to be picking.
Yep, exactly. You're spot on. I could, and those scenarios could easily play out. But yeah, definitely not at 17, but won't be at 50. But very good football player, and outside chance, like you said, he could start. All 5 of these guys could start.
He'll start one day.
Oh yeah, he will start one day. There's no doubt about that. Let's talk about you got a couple of dark horses, Coach. How don't you walk us through? We got a local kid.
Yeah, well, I think these are all players now, these 4 selections that we're going to pick, we're going to talk of. And I know we're spending a long time on offensive tackle, but it's a very, very crucial position for our football team that we support with the Detroit Lions. But overall, even arcing in regards to the draft, which is really what this is all about, it's a very, very deep position. There are a lot of good offensive tackles in this draft class. And Caleb Tiernan from Northwestern is one of them. 6'7", 325-pound redshirt senior. He's from your way over there, Drew. He's a Livonia product. Livonia, Michigan. He is a Country Day Yellow Jacket alum. So he played for Country Day at the high school level, and I believe he did go to the state finals in his day there. Played both football and basketball at Country Day. Now, this is not the Chris Webber, Shane Battier era Country Day basketball teams of the past, but they're still very, very good. So for him to play both those sports shows the kind of athletic ability that he can bring to the table. Played in all 52 games that he dressed for Northwestern for the Wildcats. Never left the Wildcats, never transferred. Didn't say that awful lot here with this position group, at least thus far. He's got 43 starts at both right tackle and left tackle with the Wildcats. He's a 2-time All Big Ten selection, 3-time All Big Ten academic selection with over 2,500 reps at offensive tackle. Drew, he's a real physical presence as a run blocker. He's a real physical presence that way.
I really, really like him at 50 if the position's not addressed at 17. He's one of those. There's a couple of these guys that if they're at 50, they're very much in play for the Lions. Yeah, and Caleb Tiernan, I mean, yeah, he played at Northwestern, and I know the Harvard of the MAC or Harvard of the Big Ten, excuse me, but hell, man, I mean that's a good football player right there, and has a shot to start, really does in my view.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's a real physical presence as a run blocker.
And I mean day one. I mean
Oh
always.
yeah. Oh
You know,
yeah. He does have, I mean, the frame to work with, to be that guy, to be that guy. Great run blocker. Great run blocker at the Big Ten level. And he can climb. He can get to that next level and be an issue there. So I mean, we're talking about, he can kind of lead through a down block and wind up to the linebacker level and pick linebackers and create all sorts of problems for them. That way he can get them, involved in screens. There's a lot of different things he can do with his movement skills. He's got a very well-developed anchor. This is a well-seasoned college football player that worked within the coaches that he always had. So he's become a great football processor and a great communicator in the process. This is a guy, Drew, that can get out there early on in his career because of those things. Now, he struggled with, some inconsistency as a block finisher. Those things aren't perfect yet. So, guys can get off blocks and, at the end and wind up in plays. And we saw there's incidents of that. You can see that it shows up on some film. He struggled with Illinois a little bit at times in his career. So that's always a great game to look at for Northwestern. They did play Ohio State. He really struggled with some of that athleticism and finishing blocks there. He can play a little bit too high, and he's 6'7", 325-pound guy. He's a big kid. So, I mean, that's something that his bend and his athleticism, which all is very good, needs to be enhanced. Because he's a little bit of a stiff hinge guy when it comes down to it. And he needs to develop a little bit here to be a great one-on-one blocker. A guy that can block anybody, in any kind of framework. Drew, he does fit the kind of spot you're looking at as a player you could take in and around that 50th pick as an offensive tackle that can be sort of the chosen one to replace Taylor Decker in one way, shape, or form. He's got the position versatility to be able to do that at the right. If they felt he was more of a right tackle fit, that's where he could go, and they could move Penei Sewell to the left tackle. He could kind of become the protege to Taylor Decker and really play behind him as an understudy and cut his teeth and help take a little bit of load off of Taylor Decker that way and be the left tackle of the future. He does have the local ties, which is kind of fairy tale stuff. I know that's not necessarily any kind of a thing for the Detroit Lions, but nonetheless, Drew, I do think this is a guy that fits at 50.
Yeah, he really does. He is another guy that I saw late day two. That slotting. That's kind of where we're talking. And but he distinguished himself. He's moved up in the conversation. And I tell you what, I would be if the Lions got him at 50, I'd be really happy because that tells me okay, then they went either edge or possibly safety or corner in the first round or whatever scenario. But to get him at 50 would be fantastic, Coach. That's how I feel about it too. So we shall see. Let's talk about your number 2 dark horse.
Yeah, Max Akor out of Arizona State. Big Max, comes from Los Angeles. He lives, from there. He was 6'6", 330-pound senior, by the way. He comes from Los Angeles, but he was born and raised in Nigeria. Okay. And Max Akor did not play football in high school. He kind of was learning the ways of being a student in the United States out of Los Angeles, California, more than he was doing anything. And he, like so many of these NFL players that have come out of Nigeria, started out in the kind of soccer, basketball, that frame of mind and their athleticism. And he was no different. That's the things that he pursued when he lived in Africa. And those were the sports that he played when he was in Africa. And those are the sports that he pursued initially when he came to the United States. However, he was kind of, consulted and advised to give football a shot. And he went over to East Los Angeles College at the great JUCO conference in the state of California, and a star was born. Max became a football man, and all in all, he has started 31 of 32 games. He's dressed for the Sun Devils. So he's got a little bit of football under his belt. He's got twice the starts that Monroe Freeling has.
Yeah.
And he's played a lot less football in his career than Monroe Freeling has. 2025 all Big 12 selection. He's got 3 career sacks and 8 quarterback hits and over 1,100 pass reps. So this is a guy that is a good pass blocker already. And he's got 2,100 reps at right tackle. So this is a right offensive tackle, Drew. Max Iannacor from Arizona State is somebody that I think we should take a look at.
Yeah. It's physically, love what I see. They have 32 games under his belt and to start in 31 of them. That's huge. That speaks volumes. This is a really good football player. I would say the safe pick if I had to choose between Tierman and Max here. I would probably go Tierman, but I would say maybe Tierman. The higher, Tierman, but maybe the higher ceiling is right here. So.
Well, Iannacor, he plays with a great competitive, edge. He's got a hard driving motor, very explosive out of his stance, very intense player. So he brings the grit factor. Those are some great things. He's got great burst and great initial quickness, and he's a movement creator. He's a right side offensive lineman. And he can be a difference maker at the point of attack. He can get things moving forward the way you'd like to see. He's a bit green when it comes to stunt detection. This is not a starter day one. If you were depending on Max Iannacor to start day one, I think we could be seeing him, being rushed a little bit because you can catch defenders a little bit when he's unsure of himself, and you can kind of just sense, especially in really highly executed, blunt, blitz and stunt schemes. He was not great out there. And that lack of experience can kind of show a little bit. So this is a player that needs to be molded somewhat. This is a totally different player than Giovanni Manu was, and that kind of a prospect. Max Iannacor is an all-conference player at Arizona State, but he's very much a diamond in the rough at this point in time, Drew. I don't think he is probably ultimately. I'd love to have him. I would love to have him, but I think he'd be a guy that you would want to have acquired additional day 2 capital to be able to take on a Max Iannacor, because otherwise I just think we need a little bit more of a ready-made player.
Yeah, totally agree with you. That's how it's got to get done with the Lions. It's unfortunate this year that that's the case, but at the same time, no, he's this is going to be a good football player and an eventual starter. I don't think there's any doubt. Do you think he could move inside?
He could. He's very moldable at this point in time. He's a guy that is so early on in his career and has such little football in him. Yes, that he could be completely molded differently. He would then probably go at right guard, which we are feeling pretty good about with Tate Ratledge.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm wondering. He's a right tackle here. He's a guy that, okay, we draft him at 50. He's kind of the extra tackle. We're kind of developing him to be a guy a year from now. Do we have that luxury? Do the Lions have that luxury to put Max Iannacor effectively on ice and just work himself in to where at the end of the year, his rookie year, he's a very capable player and could play, but still is kind of a backup until Taylor Decker retires, where then Sewell goes to the left tackle, and here we go, Max Iannacor is the starting right tackle. That would be the scenario. I just don't know if the fit is quite there, but I really, really like this player, Drew.
Yeah, he's a good one, Coach. I'll be keeping an eye definitely on day two to see what happens because, yeah, to your point, in my opinion, the Lions do not have that luxury unless they were to trade down in some scenario and require more capital. Then it becomes a possibility, and then I would embrace it, no doubt about it. But we'll trust Brad Holmes and company and let them do their thing. I got a couple dark horses, Coach. I know we're running long here, but I want to talk about Blake Miller. He's been talked about with the Lions. He's from Clemson. He's 6'6", 315 pounds, a senior. He was a four-star recruit out of Strongsville, Ohio. He started as a true freshman at right tackle in 22, and he played and started in all 54 games of his career. He earned 3 All-ACC selections in his time at Clemson, took 101 snaps at left tackle in 2024, and he also has a track and wrestling background from high school, and that's gold there. A lot to like about Blake Miller, Coach. He can play both tackle positions. He's got heavy hands and a good initial punch. He does move well laterally. He's a good run blocker and a very good pass protector. So another situation. This is pretty typical. A lot of the tackles are going to be likely better pass protectors than run blockers. But Blake Miller's got a lot of good tape for his run blocking as well, and he's a strong finisher in the run blocking game. So that's key. He's got that. Some concerns. Pad level's a concern. The longer the game goes, and we talked about that with a few of these guys. Pad level's got to be something he's got to be very cognizant of. He needs to work on keeping his hands inside defenders at the point of attack. You don't want to get outside. You don't want to start getting yellow flags for holding. That's going to be an important thing for Blake Miller to work on. And he has looked indecisive at the second level, and it does show on tape. So, Coach, there is a lot to like about Blake Miller, but that last weakness does concern me. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, he needs some more coaching, and he played awful early on. So I mean, some of his film clips may also be demonstrated earlier on in his career. It just, he's a better blocker at the line of a scrimmage and at the point of attack than he is in space. Which, this is why we're talking about a prospect that's probably not, we're looking in the top 20 picks, although this is a guy that could go as high as the first round. This is a player the Lions really, really like. I know that they do, and they really see a potential fit for him. Now, he is a right tackle predominantly, although he has taken some snaps at left tackle. So he could be that person that could kind of be that swing tackle, so to speak, and be that guy at 50 that does play an awful lot and shows 50th overall pick in the draft type minutes as a rookie, even though he is not a starter. So I do know the Detroit Lions think the world of this guy, Drew. They really, really do like him. That being said, is it all in all truly the best scheme fit for the Detroit Lions? I am not the best person to make that determination. There are other analysts and people that are into this a little bit deeper, that are a little bit more involved or understanding of what Drew Petzing is going to bring to the table to know that. But Drew, yeah, I think this is a guy that I know has been linked to the Detroit Lions. I could very well see him, here in the 50th pick.
Yeah, and I like I like the scenario you painted there because he's the type of athlete that could be used in like you said 13 technique, right? And then the line
personnel, yeah.
13 personnel. I'm sorry, 13 personnel. When you got that third tight end out there, Blake Miller would absolutely fit the bill. Athletic, strong, big guy, and definitely eventual starter. There's a lot to like there. And I was curious about your take on his performance at the second level, and it makes a lot of sense. That is coached. That's being coached up.
I didn't see a ton of it personally, but I know that there are there were games that were reviewed that showed that was a bit of an issue.
Yeah, that was out there definitely. So, but it'd be real interesting to see what happens with Blake Miller. And our last one I have here, little different. Brian Parker, the second, he's the offensive lineman out of Duke, 6'5", 300-pound junior. He's a Cincinnati native. He was a 3-star recruit. Now, he started his final 7 games of 2023, and then he earned all ACC Offensive Rookie of the Year honors. He did not allow a sack in 24. Primarily was a right tackle, but has over 370 reps at left tackle, so he's got that versatility. He allowed only 4 sacks and 4 quarterback hits in his time at Duke, and that was in 37 games he appeared in. He's projecting to move inside to play guard by some, and I'm seeing him being projected to be a center. And coach, that's why Brian Parker II really intrigues me at 50, because center is definitely a position the Lions might have to address in this draft in terms of taking over, unless Graham Glasgow is feeling good enough. But you still got to have the next guy up there too. And that's what I like about Brian Parker II is he's the guy that's definitely projecting to move inside. Your thoughts?
Oh, the versatility that you're hearing, associated with Brian Parker II's name, is very intriguing. That is very intriguing, and is definitely a player that should be put on the Lions' radar. He's got a lot of, he's got a lot of battle time. He's got a lot of battlefield time as an offensive tackle. That's where he's played predominantly. Here you see, them playing against Ole Miss. So, this is a guy that's, he's played and he's played in the ACC, which is an outstanding conference. They put the Miami Hurricanes into the national championship game this past year. So, Brian Parker II definitely is battlefield tested a little bit. He just isn't at the guard and center positions yet. So those are truly developmental positions for him. But for sure, Drew, is he somebody that we should be taking a peek at in regard to his versatility and what he could bring to the table at the 50th pick.
Yeah, he's got a great anchor. He's got great anchor strength. He's first to arrive at practice and last to leave. You gotta love that. That's the dedicated athlete and the grit that you need, and that's what Detroit's about. And you gotta love that trait. Studies the game well. He's got a high football IQ, and he really demonstrates great hand technique and finishes blocks with authority. And then you gotta like that. What are the issues? Well, we're talking about him moving inside because he is a tad undersized and really more so lacks ideal length. And that's really what's kind of pushing him inside. Now, he has a tendency to grab when a lineman gains the edge. So, again, that's definitely something you got to keep them hands inside, and he's got to get quick. But, again, it looks like he's moving inside. So, not going to see that as much. So, not as big of a concern with Brian Parker. But he does need to work on his knee bend. He can get caught too upright at times. Definitely an issue at tackle, even and a bigger issue inside. But that's probably the biggest thing with Brian Parker, the second coach, is just where is he best suited? And it's looking like it's inside. So the fact that it's inside, that means he's not going to play. For probably at least a year, and solid on your team. So. That's why I would probably go Miller over him, but I do like him a lot.
Yeah, and he could play early given the scenario because of his versatility and get on the field due to injury somewhere and be the type of player that can kind of be a chameleon. Some years he's a right tackle, some years he's a left guard, some years he's a center. He can kind of, be that guy that patches in there and ends up being a starter in one way, shape, or form. Is he like a Spencer Fano or a Francis Marigold, who you're going to say, okay, he's this position? No, he's not. Is he Caden Proctor that way? No, this is not what we're talking about. And Caden Proctor could be a guy that slides inside very easily.
Oh,
yeah. He could be somebody that plays left guard, and they fall in love with that, and they go another route with all. That's the type of thing that could happen with Caden Proctor. With Brian Parker, you're definitely drafting him likely on day 2 or day 3 early. Probably day 2, probably most certainly day 2. But yeah, I'm not so sure what he is, Drew.
Yeah, but ironically, if we reference back to our list, Brian Parker II is number 20 on our list, and we're projecting him to go possibly at 50. That's how talented and deep this group is. So that's why I said for a 17th pick overall, I could see the Lions not addressing tackle there because they're going to address it at 50 or trade up scenario, because it's going to come down to there's going to be an edge or a corner or a safety, almost guaranteed. I'm not saying who, because it just depends on how it shakes out, but there's going to be one of those four positions that'll be there for someone that can start immediately. Then you got to start picking your poison, so to speak. And tackles the one with Decker coming back, they can say, hey, this guy doesn't necessarily have to start this year, but we need him.
You that's a great point, Drew. Is we do have it kind of at least patched in with Taylor Decker.
Yeah.
And, it's what's behind Taylor Decker that still makes it a very urgent position. That we just had a retirement, and we've effectively, I almost am starting to feel like we're writing Giovanni Manu off a little bit.
Yeah.
That just starting to feel like that may not happen. I've read some things recently that we're looking elsewhere. We're looking elsewhere. And you know what? There's a free agent market too. I do anticipate they're going to be a little bit more, and I think the draft is going to present them a better option in regards to what they want in an offensive tackle. But I mean, we should fix the roof while the sun is shining, and we have a need at offensive tackle anyway still. And yes, this player could ultimately play another position, or at least play at another position at times. We shall see. I don't think though anymore as I look into it, unless they just really don't find themselves in a position to get something else, that they're going to do this at 17 any longer. I do feel like it's 50. I do feel like it's 50 or beyond, and in great part because of Taylor Decker's return, and also because there are that many of those players. There are so many players that are really, really good at this position, Drew.
Yeah, there are absolutely. I think I know that there's top 10 talent in this group, and I'm excited about it because it's nice to know that the Lions, as the team we obviously cheer for, can fall back and say, hey, we're going to get a really good player. If we drop back at that position, we can address other needs. That's not typical. So I guess that's exciting me more than anything, Coach, is because you didn't expect safety or corner to be a need. Those were not expected. Tackle and center were expected. Linebacker is expected, but not the secondary. It shouldn't have been, and it is, unfortunately. And it is what it is. But let's keep pulling and for Coach Campbell and Brad Holmes and company. They're doing the right things. Keep the faith, and we'll be talking about more draft prospects soon. For Coach Shield, I'm Drew. Take care, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget, we're going to be doing all the prospects leading up to our first round mock right before the first round. So stick and stay with us for that whole ride. It's a lot of fun. It's our 9th season. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can also follow us on X as well as Facebook so you don't miss an episode. When you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.